Good morning and welcome to the latest Heat Source webinar. Today we are discussing decarbonising Scotland's non-domestic buildings. My name is Emma Church and I'm Impact Manager at Built Environment Smarter Transformation, and I lead the Heat Source project on behalf of Scotland's economic development agencies, including Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise and South of Scotland Enterprise. So we have a really great lineup of speakers for you today. Just to reassure you that we will be recording the webinar and that will be circulated to everyone who has registered, as well as posted on the BEST YouTube channel, which can be accessed via BEST website and also the Heat Source website within a week. We will also be sharing a number of links with you today within the chat. You'll be able to see some of them populated already, and also any links or contact details of our speakers today will also be shared in there. Just drawing your attention to the chat box, that's your opportunity to ask any questions of myself or of any of our speakers. We have about 20 minutes at the end of the presentations to cover questions, and if we don't get around to all of them, we will circulate answers and responses to those after the webinar. So please do get involved, do put your questions to our speakers, and they've got lots of fantastic information to share with you, and this is your opportunity to have your questions answered. So today we are hearing from Kat McKinnon from Scottish Government, looking at the introduction to Scottish Government non-domestic decarbonisation activity around funding and other support and policy development in there. Then we'll have a case study of a retrofit of a mixed-use non-domestic building by Gavin Johnston from BEST. Then we will have a really interesting overview of the value of thermal surveys from Lisa Cairns at IRT Surveys. And then finally, a closer look at some of the kind of challenging institution and estates and locations decarbonisation from Amy Ritchie from the University of Strathclyde. Like I say, we have our chat box on the side, but before we get into our first speaker, we are going to have a little bit of a poll to get you warmed up this morning and engaging with us. So a question should come up very shortly. And yeah, it's just a question around what are some of those kind of initial barriers or the kind of biggest challenge facing those looking to decarbonise in a non-domestic setting. So if you can pop your responses in there, there are only 3 options, but if you do think that there is a fourth or a different challenge or barrier that's not listed there, pop it in the chat and that would be really good for us to maybe pick up in the discussion later on. So that'll be open for another couple of seconds. Fantastic. Thank you very much for taking part in that. Excellent. So again, we will share the kind of results of those, and it's just really good to get some insights from you as an audience. So without further ado, hopefully that is a good overview of where we're at today and what we're going to cover and what you're going to hear. Again, we will be recording the webinar and we will share it with everyone afterwards, so no need to take any notes, but do be mindful of the links in the chat box. So first up, we have Kat McKinnon from Scottish Government. So I'm going to turn my mic and screen off and leave it with Kat to cover her presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Emma. Good morning, everyone. It's timely for me to go first if everybody or the majority of people seem to think that funding and finance is one of the biggest challenges. So just a little bit about me very briefly. I joined the Scottish Government in 2017 and I've been working in climate change and economic development since 2019. I joined the public sector heat decarbonisation team earlier this year. So I'm quite new to the world of heat and energy efficiency, but I do have a pretty strong background in kind of climate and net zero. So I wanted to start by saying that I am going to talk mostly today about the Scottish Green Public Sector Estate Decarbonisation Scheme. And I will, if we could just pop onto the next slide, Emma. I'll go through the 4 kind of key elements of the scheme. So it was established in 2021 following the publication of the first heat and building strategy, and it combines 2 grant schemes and 2 loan schemes, and also the non-domestic energy efficiency framework and project support unit, for which we are re-procuring, as that's been not in place since last year. And I'm really pleased to say that since 2021, the scheme has invested over £100 million in energy efficiency and heat decarbonisation projects all across Scotland. Next slide, please, Emma. So I'll start with the central government scheme. So this offers capital funding for central government bodies, non-departmental public bodies and charitable organisations. So, for example, NHS, the enterprise agencies, museums, and any public body that has not got borrowing power. So since 2021, we've committed over £76 million and supported over 72 projects. These have generated a huge amount of carbon savings and also financial savings for these central government bodies. I'm not going to spend too much time on the ins and outs of the scheme because it's currently not open for applications, but I wanted to talk through a really lovely example from that scheme of the NHS Orkney. Next slide, please. Fantastic, thank you. So we've been working with Orkney for a little while now. They've rolled out a programme to decarbonise the remainder of their estate following the completion of the really fantastic net zero Balfour Hospital. So the new Balfour Hospital was Scotland's first fully net zero hospital. Its main site, which is fully electric powered with air to water heat pumps and 1,200 square metres of solar panels, as well as Balfour. We supported NHS Orkney across 12 sites across the archipelago, which are various different measures as are listed there, and about £4 million of capital. This was really unlocked by quite a small investment of £30,000 of resource funding to really identify the correct measures. And just to give you a sense of the scale of the savings that this project will generate, it's about 182 tonnes of carbon every year and over 622,000 kilowatt hours annually, which I Googled this morning would power about 8,500 electric cars. So quite a significant project, and that completed this year. Next slide, please. So the Public Sector Heat Decarbonisation Fund, which is delivered for us by Salix Finance, is the other half of our grant offering. This scheme is for local authorities, universities, arm's length external organisations, and offers up to 80% capital for a whole building approach to decarbonise heat and improve energy performance. This has so far supported about 11 projects with £14 million of spend. And it, as I said, is delivered by Salix, who are an arm's length body of DESNZ. They also deliver all of the UK government's equivalent schemes. That grant fund is open for a little bit longer, closes on Tuesday. for our phase 2 of Salix. And I will talk about one of the projects that Salix supported, Salix and on our behalf supported last year, which is the Glasgow Life Museum Resource Centre. Sorry, next slide, Emma. Thank you. So again, really exciting project supported by the grant scheme for the Glasgow Museum's Resource Centre. It is a storage facility primarily and visitor centre. It houses over 1 million objects from different collections, which I'm led to believe is about 90% of the city's collections stored at the resource centre at any one time. So obviously like hugely complex needs in terms of the building itself. My team was able to go and visit it a week or so ago and found it just a really fascinating site. The decarbonisation project is a Fabric's first clean heating system upgrade project and has implemented a package of heat loss improvement measures and replaces the existing polluting heating system with a really high efficiency air source heat pump. The heat pump is also enabled by various electrical upgrades and building upgrades, which has made it possible to, as I said, meet the kind of more complicated needs of a resource centre like that. And there is renewable energy generation with roof-mounted solar PV as well. So it's really a whole building solution. And again, that was a project from last year. It was awarded £1.3 million. So really incredible what they've done at Glasgow Life. Next slide, please. So I'll just briefly cover as well the 2 loan schemes that we run for the public sector. Again, these are managed by Salix Finance. The first one is the Energy Efficiency Loan Scheme, which offers up to 75% of the total project value. The benefit of the loan scheme is that there's a little bit, first of all, obviously 0 interest loans, but there is also a bit of flexibility about what you can use for loans in comparison to the grant scheme. For example, LED lighting is eligible under the loans. Salix offer a kind of holistic support as well that's kind of wrapped around the loan schemes with technical support and also kind of peer support and kind of networking opportunities that they help to provide. Both of these funds, both of these loan schemes can be used to fund projects under the non-domestic energy efficiency framework when it's back up and running as well. And we've had a large number, as you can see, of projects supported through the loan schemes, over 1,000 projects, and enormous savings as well from those 1,000 projects, over £200 million over the lifetime. The recycling fund, I think, is a fabulous concept. Thanks, Emma. So it's about long-term financing for upgrades. So there is a pot of capital that's provided by the Scottish Government, but the savings that are generated from the improvements that are fitted from the recycling loan can actually be reinvested. And there is there's a vast number, over 100 different technologies that are eligible under the recycling fund. And alongside that wraparound service that Salix provide, they do also offer a management charge where 15% of the project costs can be used to support project identification and delivery. So it's a really, I think it's a really fabulous and really sort of self-sustaining program. So I will give you an example of a recycling fund project just to make it feel a bit real. That's with the Highland Council. The Hydro Nest project was received funding through the Recycling Fund, and it has a total value of 1.7 million, of which the vast majority, so 980,000, was awarded from the Recycling Fund. This has generated more than 500,000 kilowatts of renewable energy for the Inverness Leisure Centre, and it's estimated to save the council about £75,000 a year in its annual energy bills, as well as 154 tonnes of carbon. Alongside the Nest project, the Highland Council has then used the Recycling Fund to complete a further 49 energy efficiency projects, which, when combined, they will save over 2,000 tonnes of carbon every year. So it just goes to show that it is a really virtuous circle that the Recycling Fund kickstarts, and it can really quite quickly add up to big savings, both of money and carbon. I won't pretend to know how the turbines actually work, but it looks really fascinating. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the non-domestic energy efficiency framework and project support unit, mostly to just let everybody know that these things are coming. So we're currently procuring the project support unit, which will be sort of consultant support, and that will be available to all kind of public sector bodies to call off that framework to get consultant support for project planning and identification of measures. And then once having used the PSU, hopefully successfully identified a project, hopefully successfully gained funding, either grant or loan, public bodies can come back on to the NDE framework, which is actually designed to support the procurement of those projects, and then can ensure that a public body feels confident that they're going to get a really good value contract to deliver that work. As I said, it came to the end. The previous NDE came to an end last year, so we're just in the process of re-procuring both frameworks. And we'll definitely keep everybody up to date on when they're back in place. I wanted to finish off today just by talking a little bit about another aspect of the work that more broadly we support from the public sector unit, which is the Net Zero Public Sector Building Standard. It's something I feel really passionately about. I think it's such a great tool. It's been used really successfully on new build projects across the public sector, and it's something that I hope we can apply to more retrofit projects. The Scottish Futures Trust was the sort of key partner that helped us to develop this standard, and they run an excellent series of events on the standard, so I won't even attempt to explain the whole standard, just to encourage those who are interested to reach out to the team at SFT, and just to again say I think it is really important that we apply the standard to retrofit projects as well. And that is me done. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. I will pass on to the next speaker, who I believe is Gavin.
Thanks very much, Kat. Thanks for having me, everyone. My name is Gavin Johnston. I am also an impact manager at Built Environment Smarter Transformation, and I'm here today to talk about another project that was supported through a Scottish Public Sector Heat Decarbonisation Fund, the retrofit of Scotland's National Retrofit Centre. Next slide, please, Emma. Yeah, so I will assume that most people know about BESS, but we'll leave this slide here and it'll be in the pack for anyone who wants to learn more about who we are as the Innovation Centre for the Scottish construction sector and wider built environment. And what we do is we are utilising our assets within our innovation campus at Blantyre to accelerate the sector's transition to net zero carbon. We do that through various events, our upskilling of the workforce, programmes that we support, projects that we develop, our annual conference, Best Fest, which is held in November, and hopefully through programmes and projects like the one I'm going to speak about today, which is, as I said, the retrofit of the National Retrofit Centre project. Best are hosted by Edinburgh Napier University, which meant that we were eligible for the fund administered by Salix, and we were awarded just over £1.2 million to cover 80% of the cost of funded measures within the programme to decarbonise the heat within one of the two buildings on our campus, where we currently deliver our skills training, and this is the first phase of a multi-phase development. Next slide, please, Emma. With so many non-domestic buildings across Scotland, we saw this as a unique opportunity for us to walk the walk, as it were, and demonstrate to our wider stakeholders how you might approach decarbonisation and retrofit of non-domestic property, with it also driving as much value as possible. So engaging in events such as this to spread the word about what we're doing and give insights behind the build and our approach and what we've done, and really try to deliver more than a standalone project that has impact beyond the direct carbon savings from decarbonising the heat source. Next slide, please, Emma. So we set out to give Scotland the national centre that it deserves, and we wanted to provide something that acted as a living lab in order to demonstrate different use cases, different approaches. We don't see this as a building where you would have a carbon copy of this approach, but something more as a menu of options and innovative solutions in retrofit that could be taken away to be delivered on other public buildings or indeed domestic properties as well. The lessons that we learn in retrofit are universal. Next slide, please. So the measures that as funded or as they appear in the application form are on the screen now. I won't read them out for you, but essentially we've taken a fabric first approach on the building, the ultimate intent being to reduce the overall demand of the heated spaces within the building before then introducing a zero direct emissions heating system that would use minimal amount of energy, as well as some generated energy on solar PV on the roof. This is as the application appeared when we applied for the fund in 2023, and we were notified that we were successful in April 2024. However, we were only at stage 1 design at that time, which meant that within the calendar year we had to go to stage 4 design, public procurement, procure the works, get a contractor, get them on site and deliver this project, which made it extremely difficult both in terms of timescales and increased costs experienced throughout the sector. So there was elements of value engineering which we'll touch on, which I think will be familiar to anyone working in public sector buildings or any retrofit project at all on non-domestic or domestic properties where finance is a real challenge. Next slide, please. So as part of this work, we've split the work into 3 phases. There is a number of reasons for that. We believe that it was more representative of what our stakeholder and wider audience would undertake. We also had ambitions for the building in terms of future development of that, but that was not set in stone at this point. And we needed to be able to have a deliverable phase 1 project that met the requirements of the funding and also met our requirements as well without creating any abortive spend or work. We didn't want to be installing measures that might later have to be adapted or taken out. but we had to ensure that we were able to deliver something meaningful and reduce the demand on the building. So the current phase 1 is about heat decarbonisation and fabric envelope measures. The phase 2 is future internal reconfiguration works of the office spaces, as well as potential extension and the completion of that envelope. And the future phases would be phases 3, 4, 5, and 6, which would be the entire building as we see it, eventually ultimately intended to meet the EnerPHit standard, but also the wider net zero campus overall. Next slide, please. Very boring layout plan for everyone here, just to give a demonstration of what we're looking at. This is the building as it currently exists in plan, and the red delineated area, the area demolition, really outlines where we're working. At this point, we're essentially taking 3 sides of a 4-sided box down, improving the thermal efficiency on the exterior envelope, increasing the insulation and the roof, and then decarbonising the heat in those heated portions of the front end of the building. The back end of the building is a non-heated space, factory warehouse space that would come in future phases. Next slide. Externally, their ambition for this was to reclad the building in a heavily insulated CLT panelised system that we could produce and manufacture off-site as far as is possible, with triple glazed windows and doors, higher energy efficiency, high degree of air tightness, and using a timber cladding system. This is the long-term ambition. Which included in this current drawing is an entrance porchway and canopy. That was value engineered out of the project in this phase, moved to phase 2 because it sat out with the thermal envelope of the building, and that was our key consideration when going through value engineering options when evaluating the project, was to ensure that we met the requirements of the funding and our overall energy ambitions for the project. So anything that was extra to the thermal envelope was moved into future phases of development work. And next slide, please, Emma. So with all retrofit projects, there are challenges and opportunities in decarbonisation. A key factor for us was the timescales to completion, the parameters set by the funding requirements, and also our ability to move quickly and deliver the work. Opportunity and scoping in terms of the phasing of the development, and also that narrative. How were we able to drive innovation? Being the innovation centre, we wanted to ensure that we were being data driven and also demonstrating as many innovative solutions, product demonstrators as possible, and maximising the showcase for the best of Scottish construction sector. How did we manage risk in terms of meeting the funding requirements whilst also not sacrificing our overall ambition, and vice versa? How do we ensure that we capitalise on storytelling, both in terms of our knowledge around embodied carbon and our delivery process, and how do we ensure that we created a platform within the building that delivers more carbon savings beyond those direct savings from the systems installed? Next slide, please. We achieved this by an analysis of the existing building, which included thermography as well as air tightness testing. We developed an overall EnerPHit strategy for the building, which we then phased, so we would not go for certification for that standard at this point, because we would not be completing the full amount of works. And then we highlighted out within our key features. The predominant factor in terms of our decarbonisation of the building is the innovative heating system, which is a hybrid system of using a solar photovoltaic with a thermal loop panels on the roof. We have a modified ground source heat pump within the building, which doesn't have a ground loop. The water source goes onto the roof and circulates behind the PV array. And that does the majority of the building demand. However, the system is also backed up by an air source heat pump to meet those peak load demands on those coldest days of the year. Also, the ground source heat pump that has been installed is set on a cascading system, so it's a dual system. So it's not a 23 kilowatt heat pump running at all times. It's actually 2 units split, allowing for maximum efficiency possible. Next slide, please. Within the building fabric as well, we've managed to partner with companies that we're aware of and who are industry leaders in their field. We've been able to utilise the Kenetech K-brick, which is a 90% recycled brick, incredibly low embodied carbon in its production. We're using Scottish cladding provider Rustwood for the external envelope. We've got ecological building systems providing air tightness membranes and tapes to ensure that we can achieve a target air tightness of 1 actuation at 50 pascals within the final build. We've a mixture of Rockwool Inditherm, and not highlighted on this slide. However, we have warm cell insulation and blown insulation. And what we have done here is we've utilised the Indie Nature Inditherm hemp and jute bat insulation in the walls, as well as warm cell blown recycled newspaper insulation within the panelised structure. The panelised structure has been manufactured within the Best factory using homegrown Scottish timber to create CLT panels by Ecosystems Technologies, and High 6 Design have the architectural technologists who have devised they've adapted John Gilbert Architects system in order to clad the building overall. The Rockwool insulation is used within suspended timber ceiling detail because it offers higher performance in terms of fire rating, as well as we wanted to compare and contrast the workability of different materials and show the range of options available. Next slide. So this is the within our factory at Best, which everyone is welcome to come and visit, as well as coming to visit the project itself, where we were manufacturing the CLT with the design team and with members of our own team to show how easy it is to do, as well as cutting down on the embodied carbon of the response as well. Next slide. Once the CLT has been created, we were then able to process it within the factory, strapping it out using timber JGI joists to minimise thermal bridging through the design, and then infill those panels, as I said, with the Inditherm insulation, avoiding any gaps and adhering to the Passive House principles. We've also gathered all the evidence for future certification to Interfit standard, and we've had that reviewed by a certifier. Next slide. The design works on the principle of encapsulating the existing steelwork frame, which is all retained, which helps us with our embodied carbon calculations, and retaining the existing concrete slab and avoiding any thermal bridging through the structure of the building by enclosing it all within a new system. So we've removed an existing glass and metal curtain walling system and installed this new CLT panelised system. Next slide, please. These are the panels almost ready to be craned out of position. So we have a majority of some of the panels come out of the factory 95% complete. So they come out fully clad with the windows fitted, the tapes and membranes all complete to be craned into position, and other panels were clad in situ. But again, most panels came out between 85 and 95% complete, which allowed us to meet that extremely tight timescales, as well as showing the efficiencies and additional safety we see when modern methods of construction. Next slide. We've moved in the panels into position here. Emma, if you just want to cycle through these images fairly quickly. Yeah, so then we crane the panels into position. We've you can see in these images here where we've got the existing structure exposed. We've dropped the existing cladding curtain walling system. We've got temporary hoarding separating the external and the internal environment, which allows us to work in both areas simultaneously, and also helped us to meet that really tight program. The crane lift was done over 5 crane lift days, while manufacturing of other panels phases were completed, and we worked our way around the building installing the cladding system as we went. We can see here the exposure, the variety between the cladding, how finished one product is over another. Again, as I say, the big advantage here too was being able to work simultaneously internally and externally, because there's obviously quite a significant MEP package. This is one of the rooms where the internal hoarding dropped once the completion of the exposed services, inclusion of the new MVHR handling units for that higher quality indoor air quality when we're achieving such low air permeability through the facade. We've reduced the amount of glazing internally, so we've addressed the current solar, the summer overheating due to solar again, but we've also maximised that to reduce here. One element that we did omit in changing our scope within the phase 1 project was we did not include for ground floor insulation in this phase, but we have designed the building to be able to account for future phases of work where ground floor insulation up to 230 mil to be installed. So all of the windows and door heads have been designed to accommodate that. This allowed us to make savings on the additional cost. This is the most exciting picture here. So we've got a much larger, newer plant room, which will be open to those who want to come and visit it. And here we can see our 2,000 litre buffer tank and our ground source heat pump that will do the majority of our demand within the building, and hope to have some drone footage very soon of our PVT array. And our last image shows where we are at with the majority of the cladding phases complete. We are now fully complete with our external cladding in place, and all internal hoarding has been dropped and all the MEP is installed inside, and we're aiming for completion towards the end of June. As I say, the buildings there are available for tours. We're doing a series of behind the build events, and if anyone wants to ask any questions at the end, happy to answer, or you can contact me and drop me an email. And that's me. I've run over time, apologies, so I will pass on to Lisa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gavin. Good morning, everyone. So I'm Lisa Cairns. I work for IRT Surveys. IRT Surveys are based in Scotland. We're part of the NEARS group, and we offer a range of thermal imaging services across the public sector and private sector, and we cover the UK. So at IRT, we survey all types of buildings, and we're well known for the work we do with social housing providers, but we are also aware that the decarbonisation of commercial buildings stands as both a challenge and an opportunity for most of our current customers. So to improve energy efficiency, reduce operational costs and extend the life of our buildings, we need to start with one critical action, and that's really understanding the true condition of the building. And that's really where thermal surveying comes in, and we tend to come in at the start of that process. Thanks, Emma. So the problem with guesswork is that too often we're finding that retrofit strategies are based a lot on assumptions or visual inspections alone. And the outcome of that can lead to a lot of misdiagnosed issues within those buildings. And I think the main thing we are seeing is maybe unnecessary solutions being applied to these buildings. So this could be applying incorrect energy efficiency measures or carrying out work that's maybe not being required. So this obviously results in unnecessary costs, both in terms of money and carbon. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thanks. So thermal imaging plays a big part in removing that guesswork, and it provides a clear visual evidence of where buildings are losing heat. So this can be through missing or damaged insulation, thermal bridging, cladding failures, or water ingress, and it can help decision makers just see what the eye cannot. So we carry out heat loss surveys mainly within the winter months. We start around October time, and we carry them through right to about the end of March. We tend to do a lot more in Scotland, maybe up to the end of April, just because the temperatures are a lot colder. So we do have quite a short time frame in those winter months to really do the thermal imaging side of those projects. And I've highlighted 4 key areas here where we carry out the majority of our survey work for non-domestic buildings. And the top one there is schools and council buildings, and these surveys tend to be to assess the areas of heat loss, any insulation defects, and any structural issues. We do loads of flat roof surveys, again, mainly on schools, but they're quite reactive surveys. We do find that the buildings have issues currently, and we're out there just to really locate leaks and address wet insulation and just where those areas are. And it offers a nice non-intrusive solution for roofing companies too. Commercial buildings has mainly been to assess condition of cladding, the condition of render, and the insulation performance on those buildings. The post-retrofit is probably more prominent in the last year to 2 years, and the post-retrofit surveys we carry out has mainly been to validate the workmanship, the quality of the workmanship of any measures that have been applied to commercial buildings, and really just to ensure that those solutions are working. So that will be a heat loss survey across elevations and roofs, just to check that those solutions are working. So before and after thermal surveys on larger buildings are now much more common. So before retrofit and after retrofit. Non-domestic surveys still makes up about 50% of our revenue as a business, and has done for several years. So in the past 2 years, we've probably seen quite an increase in surveys for more complex buildings, and that's things like your historical buildings, your large commercial units and office buildings. We've done a few RAF bases, hospitals and supermarkets. So they can be very complex buildings that a decent survey to start with really helps with that decarbonisation strategy. Next slide, please, Emma. So here's an example of a recent survey that we did on a school. It's Portree High School in the Scottish Highlands. We carried out this survey on behalf of Mears Facilities Management. They manage 10 schools on behalf of the council. And despite years of repairs, the school continued to suffer from water ingress and a fair amount of fabric deterioration. So traditional investigations couldn't really pinpoint the main cause of the fabric issues. The background on this project is many ongoing issues with decay, deterioration of the building fabric, which was leading to render damage, guttering issues, a lot of water ingress. There was a lot of investigation work being carried out, reports being carried out, and constant remedial works. And various reports had been commissioned, but all coming back with suspected issues. And a lot of those suspected issues were that the problems were with the guttering and the downpipes. So the Mears team were still quite unclear what the main cause was, and really what action to take here. Next slide, please, Em. So what did we do? So we were commissioned to do a full visual and thermal survey of this building, and that is all of the elevations and the roof. The visual images are obviously taken during the daytime, and they will highlight any staining of the building fabric, cracked render, issues with guttering, presence of vegetation as well. And the nighttime thermal imaging is really just to detect all those areas of heat loss, thermal bridging, as well as any presence of moisture. So the images on the left here are an extract from the report, just really highlighting areas where they've seen some defects in the building. All of these images are then analysed by the IRT team based in Dundee, and the results are reported back to the client. So in this case, it was back to the Mears FM team, highlighting the findings. So we will sit down with every client during this process and go through this report in a fair amount of detail. I think in the past we've maybe expected a lot of our clients to interpret the information themselves and can understand what maybe their next action is. So I think our analysts have really provided a great service in just providing a lot more detail around what those images are actually telling the client and what are the issues with that building. Next slide, please. So the results from the survey that we carried out revealed multiple critical issues in this building. The main one, heat loss at wall and roof junctions from missing insulation, a fair amount of render delamination. There was gutter detailing failures there as well, but a lot of hidden water ingress, not detectable by visual inspections. So there's some images here on the slides that might be quite interesting to everyone that's listening, but the extracts here show the roof survey that we carried out, and the overall conclusion really from our analysts was that most of the issues were caused by the roof, not by the guttering and the downpipes, which there were issues with. So these insights did enable Mears to then justify that full roof replacement. So that was funded based on the thermal evidence here. Next slide, please. So impact and ROI, what was the outcome? So in this case, the thermal survey provided enough proof that the building fabric issues in the school were being caused by the roof. And with the thermal data, the Mears were comparing 18 months of reactive maintenance costs to the cost of a new roof. And that results in a more cost-effective, energy-efficient, future-proof solution to increase the life cycle of that school. By comparing those additional data sets, it just helps with that decision-making process. And there's just a nice quote there from the life cycle manager at Mears, just saying they wouldn't have been in a strong position to get those repairs approved without being certain that that was the issue, that the particular issue with this building. Next slide, please, Emma. So close off and summarise. Thermal surveys don't just detect problems, they will help to guide decarbonisation, and how they do that is really by understanding the true condition of your building as a starting point. This in turn will ensure that any investment you make in retrofit is targeting the real inefficiencies and not the assumptions. And thermal imaging is a powerful tool for assessing energy efficiency, but combining it with other data sets can provide a more comprehensive approach. And this is what we've seen in this case study, is combining it with the data from current repairs and the remedial works that have been carried out in the last 18 months just really helps that decision-making process. I think as well, comparing it with other data sets such as energy consumption is really, really useful too. So in the long term, this helps to reduce your emissions by eliminating that waste, reducing the repair cycle and extending the building lifespan. Thank you, Emma. Next slide. So I think the next slide just really has my contact details on it, but if anyone wants to discuss a current project, we can compare results from other similar projects that we've carried out, or just kind of go through the process of what we do and what the outcome is. My contact details today, and you can contact one of our team and set up a meeting with us anytime. Thank you. Over to Amy.
Hi everyone, thanks Lisa, and thanks for having me today, Emma. So my name is Amy Ritchie and I am Head of Sustainable Resources and Social Responsibility at the University of Strathclyde. I work within the university's Sustainable Strathclyde team, and we are based within the Estates Department. So our role is to keep the university on track in terms of our net zero and sustainability goals, and work with colleagues within estates and more widely in the university and also externally to develop and deliver our net zero pathway for decarbonisation of the university, which is a big challenge for us. So for me personally, I come from a sustainability and heat network and low carbon heat policy and strategy background. So hopefully give you an overview of where we are as an institution, some of the issues that the other speakers have spoken about in practice, and some of the challenges and opportunities for us in terms of decarbonisation. So the University of Strathclyde is based obviously within the Glasgow city region. Our main campus, hopefully you're all aware of it, is the John Anderson campus, which is based right within the city centre. However, we do have a number of satellite sites based throughout the sort of Clyde Valley region. So Ross Priory, for example, is a really beautiful 19th century Grade A listed building up on the banks of Loch Lomond, and it's in the Loch Lomond and Trossachs National Park. So challenges there in terms of dealing with a listed building, it's quite remote. Obviously the sort of challenges of being in a national park. We also operate a number of facilities down in the Advanced Manufacturing Innovation District down by Glasgow Airport. So the National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland and the Advanced Forming Research Centre. We have our playing fields out at Steps, and then our Power Networks Demonstration Centre up near Cumbernauld. So all of this to say that a big diverse estate means that we have a lot of diverse challenges, and there's no silver bullet for us in terms of decarbonisation. So what might work at one site may not work at another. So our pathway and our strategy takes a very place-based and contextual approach to decarbonisation. Next slide, please, Emma. So just to set our work in context, the university has several ambitions around sustainability and net zero. We published our brand new Strathclyde 2030 strategy last year, and that takes the university from 2025 to 2030. So the headline net zero target, I suppose, is that we have an 80% reduction target for greenhouse gas emissions against our 2018-19 baseline for scopes 1, 2 and some scope 3, and we're currently looking at our scope 3 boundary at the moment to make sure we have a clear picture of what we're aiming to reduce, and then of course net zero by 2040 at the latest. And I think it's also important to mention we have 2 other high-level targets around sustainability in our education and our research. So we want all education programmes to have learning outcomes on sustainable development by 2027, and then to also make sure that we measure the impact of our research and make sure that aligns to the sustainable development goals. And whilst our team looks after the sort of greenhouse gas inventory for the university and ways of reducing that, there is very much overlap in terms of our other goals and our activities as a university. Primarily, we exist to deliver education, and we take responsibility for the students and the staff that go out into the world after they've been at Strathclyde and the impact that they make. So there's definite opportunities to learn and share with our academic colleagues as well. Next slide, please. And again, just to illustrate where we are at the moment. So the emissions graph and the emissions that are shown on screen at the moment is everything that is currently within the boundary of our net zero target. So you can see obviously our scope 1 and 2 emissions in terms of our gas use and our grid electricity, and then a number of scope 3 emissions as well, which, as I say, we are looking at the moment. So I think this is fairly typical in terms of universities at the moment, where we saw quite significant reductions, obviously huge reduce in business travel during COVID, and then we've started to creep back up again. And in terms of our scope 1 and 2 emissions and our gas use, that big peak in 2018-19 is when our heat network came online. So we have on our John Anderson campus CHP-led heat network. We have a 3.3 megawatt CHP engine in there, and that feeds around 20 buildings across our main campus. So gas use crept up when that was installed, and then obviously as at the moment the heat network is very electrically led to keep our bills down. So as the grid has decarbonised and as the heat network was installed, our grid electricity emissions reduced, but very much stagnated. So big challenge, and we've estimated that the total investment to decarbonise the whole university would be around about £1 billion. So lots of work to do, both in terms of the scope 1 and 2 emissions and the other areas that we cover as a team as well. So to go into some of those challenges, and I think some of the other speakers have illustrated these, the city centre campus, and I'm talking mostly about our John Anderson campus in this context, but the city centre campus obviously presents challenges in terms of the limitations that we have in terms of just digging up roads, kind of interventions. We've got people constantly passing through our campus. We're quite limited in terms of space. So that presents challenges in terms of just how often we can shut down buildings, planning permission, things like that, to actually undertake interventions on our buildings. Coupled with that, we've got the age and range of building typologies. So we, as I've mentioned, we've got listed buildings. We have the Royal College on our main campus, which is another listed building. We've got kind of mid-20th century buildings that are just in quite poor condition. And then we also have some new buildings mixed in there as well. We've got our sports centre with swimming pools. I know this webinar is focused on non-domestic buildings, but we've also got our residences as well. So a big range of needs and uses across the campus, which presents challenges. And then in terms of the actual campus utilisation, since COVID, the way that the campus has been used has just changed. And I think people's expectations of work and of studying have changed in terms of how often people are on campus, the way in which they want to use buildings, and what that means in terms of how we heat and power and then decarbonise has an impact. So at the moment, we're actually undertaking a big programme of work in terms of building closures, how we use our buildings, trying to get more data in terms of how our staff and students are spread across the campus, the buildings that have really high footfall, and again, trying to use that information and data to inform our net zero pathway and our decarbonisation strategy. But then in terms of that data availability, Lisa touched on it there, we do lack some data in terms of those patterns of use, sort of making assumptions about our buildings, and also in terms of estates as a department, there's a lot of institutional knowledge there and a lot of people who have been in that department for a long time. So if those people leave or move on, then we often lose that information. So it's better for a lot of our newer buildings, but in terms of our older buildings or buildings that we actually lease from the council, which we have a couple of, data availability to make well-informed decisions can be difficult to come by. And then finally, I think it's no secret that finances in the HE sector are not in a great position at the moment. So the actual finances and funding to undertake interventions and fund our net zero pathway is a real big challenge across the board at the moment. And next slide, please, Emma. But then on the flip side, lots of opportunities as well. So City Centre campus was on the last slide as a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. We are really well placed in terms of the John Anderson campus is within the Glasgow City Innovation District, so we have so much talent and expertise in that area that we can tap into. So we work very closely in partnership with organisations and collaboration groups like Sustainable Glasgow, which brings together lots of the other educational establishments in the city centre, but also private sector partners, public sector in terms of the council, Scottish Government. So we really try our best to tap into those groups and make sure that we're working collaboratively. And it also means that we don't have to work in isolation, particularly on our city centre campus, where obviously the Glasgow City Council are doing a lot of work in terms of delivery of their local heat and energy efficiency strategy. We have a heat network on our campus, so we are very much in talks and have been for a long time with the City Council in terms of developing district large-scale heat networks and how we can play a role in providing an anchor load for those networks and hopefully pushing up forward on those schemes. We also have obviously academic expertise, and we have what's called our Net Zero Accelerator Group, who are a collective of academics who are all working on things like decarbonisation and building standards that we want to get their expertise and build it into our operational projects. And we also have student projects taking place as well, which often are really excellent quality. So that's great. And then in terms of forthcoming policy and regulation, some of the things that Kat touched on, hoping that that can help speed up in terms of things like the Heat and Buildings Bill, the Heat Network Scotland Act, blending further regulation and sort of security and trying to dispel some of the risks around developing low carbon heat networks in city centres. So that will support our work as well. Next slide, please. Now, this is a bit of work that we carried out with consultants a couple of years ago, and we're continuing to build on in terms of targeted actions across the campus to essentially meet our decarbonisation goals across 1 and 2. So you can see the main interventions that were picked out. So we've got BAU, so that's just kind of relying on further grid decarbonisation. Optimisation there is seen as quite a small reduction, but I think that would actually, if it was this work was carried out today, would probably be bigger in terms of the work that we're doing to, as I say, essentially close some buildings, sell some buildings, etc. fabric and energy management. So I'll come on to some examples of that. We've got solar PV. Again, that's an ongoing program of work to install solar on our campus, LED lighting, and then heat pumps, so decarbonisation of our energy centre. And then a chunk of residual emissions that we'll need to think about potentially offsetting at some point in the future, but I don't feel like we're anywhere close to that at this point. But what we want to do is build on this work to split it up by building typologies and create a pathway that says these are the places and the timelines that we should make the best decisions in terms of well-timed, well-costed interventions on campus, and present that to our senior management with funding options as well. So in terms of then some of the actions that we've taken, we are very much trying to, and I think most of the higher education sector are trying not to build new buildings. We don't need any new buildings, but if we are going to build new, we need to build better. So the National Manufacturing Institute for Scotland is an excellent example of this, and very happy to share more information with anyone who's interested. We do tours out there, and it's a really excellent facility. I was out there this week and they were saying about how well some of the sort of sustainable interventions work. So we use the REBA Sustainable Outcomes Framework to design and deliver the NMIS building. It's net zero for regulated energy, and we incorporated several sort of interventions and innovations to make sure that we reduce both the operational carbon but also the embodied carbon, so the actual materials used to build. And with all of our projects, this is key to mention, we don't want to just focus on carbon reductions, we also want to make sure we're delivering health and well-being benefits, that they're well-connected buildings that people can walk and cycle to. We want our campus to be a healthy, safe, nice place to be for all of our staff and students and visitors as well. So I think the next slide just shows some of these interventions in a bit more detail. So there's 500 kilowatts of installed PV capacity on the roof, but almost a megawatt of installed capacity in total. There's also some ground mount. We've got rainwater harvesting, which again, a colleague out there was telling me that meets around 80% of their water needs. We've got enhanced fabric and air tightness, so sort of overcladding, and also there's screening on the windows to reduce solar glare, and making sure that that temperature regulation in the building is much better in terms of, you know, it's not boiling hot in the summer and then freezing cold in the winter. So, and also this is an interesting facility in that the part on the right hand side, that's all a big factory space, which is all kind of open plans. There's a lot of air circulation in there as well. The building is also fed by a 5th generation heat network that was a partnership with Renfrewshire Council and was funded by LCITP funding. So we are connected to that and have some booster heat pumps in the building. But as I say, very happy to share more information on that. And then in terms of retrofits and actions on our current buildings, we are very much taking a fabric first approach. We want to reduce energy usage on our campus first and foremost, to then enable further heat decarbonisation. So particularly, as I mentioned, in terms of connecting to low carbon heat in the city centre and eventually working towards decarbonisation of our CHP energy centre. Our CHP engine has about 10 years still left on its lifetime, so building that into our decision making in terms of when enabling works need to be completed. And then looking at different investment options. So we've taken advantage of some of the funding measures that Kat mentioned, particularly the Salix Recycling Fund, and also received funding from the Scottish Funding Council. And then I mentioned the point about climate adaptation, health and well-being, and involving our community as much as we can in the decision making. So, you know, these buildings, are for our students and for our community. So we want to make sure they serve the purpose, both in terms of their energy efficiency and the actual kind of sustainability credentials of them, but do they serve the need of our community? We also have a big retrofit project that we are currently underway in terms of planning for. So our old Students' Union building, which is on John Street, we are looking to embed the public sector, net zero public sector building standards. So that's the first time we will be using that standard. So Kat touched on that as well. So excited for that to come forward. And there's some interesting examples in terms of the use of that building and inviting in the community, and things like, again, rainwater attenuation, potentially even looking at internal vertical farming in that building. So lots of really exciting stuff going on there. And then next slide, please. And these are just a couple of final examples of both ongoing and completed projects. So we're currently undertaking an overcladding project of our John Anderson building, which is our physics building. So that's a £12.5 million project, but projected savings annually. And same with our rooftop PV. So we have rooftop PV on several buildings on our John Anderson campus at the moment, but continuing to roll that out to be able to generate more of our own electricity. And then also last year, we just completed the extension of our district energy network to our residence building. So being able to achieve further savings in terms of cost and carbon, but also increasing the overall efficiency of the network, which was sized to be able to serve much more buildings than it currently does. So thinking about how do we, again, connect up on a city scale, but how do we work with partners like the NHS, the hospital is just up the road from us, Glasgow City College is just up there. So building in those elements as well. And I think that is it from me. But as I say, if anyone would like to follow up, or if there are any particular technical questions, then please do get in touch. And I believe Emma will be sharing our personal emails as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you to all of our speakers. We will get onto the Q&A in just a moment, but first of all, I just wanted to highlight some ways that you can engage with the heat source programme. So we have our monthly newsletter. The link will be in the chat box, or you can use your mobile device to scan either of these QR codes. So we send out information about case studies, funding, projects and events run by us and others that may be of interest to the clean heat community in Scotland and further afield as well. So please sign up to that. Our next event, so as well as webinars, we do in-person events, will be in Inverness on the 4th of June, working really closely with Highlands and Islands Enterprise, Home Energy Scotland and Changeworks to design a really fantastic day looking at how to accelerate decarbonisation of heat across that region. You know, specific challenges around place and communities and workforce will be addressed through that. So if you're interested or would like to make the journey on hopefully what will be a nice sunny day up to Inverness, we would love to see you there. We also have a number of opportunities, so you can visit heatsource.org. If you've missed any of our past webinars, you can head over there. You can find links to our recordings. We also have some links to current funding opportunities and the support that's available through us. If you head to the inquiries page, you can book a one-to-one. So if you are an industry member of the audience, we do some one-to-ones to understand what your specific challenges are and how the enterprise agencies can support you in terms of growth or innovation that you may be working on. We're really active on LinkedIn, again sharing some good news stories and policy updates and lots of other engaging content on over there. And finally, Scottish Enterprise have their own dedicated newsletter for the clean heat sector, and you can follow that link in the chat. And that's where you'll find up-to-date information about the other support that is available through Scottish Enterprise. In the past, there have been accelerator programmes and other kind of dedicated workshops to engage with industry and make sure that everyone is aware and accessing the wonderful range of support that's available from our economic development agencies. So we can head into our Q&A now. So if I can just invite all of our panelists to pop your microphones and your webcams back on, that's great, and we will head into that. Just a reminder for our audience, there are still plenty of you that are still online. Thank you for listening intently to all of our speakers, but now's your opportunity to get involved and pop your questions into the chat. There's no such thing as a silly question, and we won't be asking you to speak. You can type your question in and I'll ask that to our panel on your behalf. So I'm actually going to stop sharing so that we've just got our speakers on screen. So firstly, thank you everybody. That was a really fantastic range of presentations, and I think just showing and highlighting the diversity of the challenges. Probably want to pick up on the poll from the beginning. Again, it was quite overwhelming that funding and finance was the main challenge and barrier, and I think some of the projects and the other presentations also kind of touched on that. So maybe Kat, a question for you on the kind of SALIX funding for that was used to decarbonise the Scottish National Retrofit Centre and the other projects that you highlighted. Is there any guarantees or any ambition around the kind of longevity of that fund? And I know phase 2 is imminently about to close, but is there likely to be subsequent phases where people can maybe start thinking ahead of getting, understanding their phase 1 plans and getting some way down that journey and in preparation for that?
Thanks, Emma. I definitely think so. With this year going into our sort of final phase of this parliamentary term's funding, so I think we'll be doing a lot of thinking about what comes next from 2026. I certainly will be doing a lot of engaging with everybody, hopefully, who wants to speak to me about how their experience has been with the funding, and wanting to put forward a really strong case for the next phase of funding. The commitment was always that it would be for this parliamentary term, so obviously there's no guarantees, and of course with an election next year, we have to wait until there is a new government in place. But the appetite is clearly there, the pipeline is clearly there. The role, I think, of stakeholders in this is to be, demonstrating that the public sector is really doing incredible innovative projects, and that they have such huge savings both for carbon and cost. I think that's the best thing that we can do, to be really singing the praises of what the public sector is doing. And I don't think that is minimizing the challenges at all. Of course, like funding and finance will continue to be an enormous barrier, but it's something that I feel really strongly about, and hopefully we can continue the program for years to come. We've got a legal duty to become net zero by 2045, and there are climate change duties for the public sector that they need to meet, and therefore they need to be supported. The sector needs to be supported to meet that. And also we have a really, I think, vibrant private sector and SMEs that can be learning and delivering and really getting involved in the journey to net zero. And I think that needs to be a part of the conversation as well. I think that we've got the community wealth building bill, and we've got just transition commitments. So it does need to, I think that needs to be part of the conversation around the decarbonisation of our estates.
Absolutely, thank you so much, Kat. Yeah, it's always a difficult question, like say, with the uncertainty and parliamentary terms and that kind of changing policy and political landscape, to make those long-term guarantees. Just to pick up on the other, so those that didn't vote for funding is the biggest challenge. It was around knowing kind of where to start. Lisa, you very much kind of touched on that as thermal surveys, and Amy too, of baselining kind of where you are and understanding and the real value of that intelligence on state of play. Amy, can you speak a little bit on how you've approached that? You've identified some data kind of gaps. What's the sort of strategy to start to fill those in? Is it about sensor technology? Is it about clever estimations or databases and programs around that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think when we first started building out our net zero pathway, so it very much started with looking at our estate as a whole, and to the best that we could in terms of the information that we had around our gas use and our energy use, picking out the the real kind of problem spots in terms of particular buildings, but also trying to group them by typology or by use case, because I think what might work for one of those buildings might be applicable to all of them. So as you say, we're trying to build up a better picture. I think, Lisa, it'd be good to chat to yourself about how we maybe can plug some of those gaps. And we have had help, and we do need help. You know, we've employed consultants to help us look at identifying where our data gaps are and plugging those. We're also looking at creating digital twins for some of our buildings to try and model what kind of changes interventions could lead to, and what the kind of the best combination of interventions will be. So I think starting small and trying to identify where your gaps are, and then seeking help, whether it's consultants or just speaking to people who've done it before, and going from there was kind of how we started out, and then building up that portfolio of information to be able to make better decisions as we go.
Great. Thank you so much. Lisa, I don't know if you want to come in and on the kind of ability of those kind of thermal surveys and the, like say, the value add of maybe identifying what some kind of quick, inexpensive wins might be. Obviously, some of the funding things and the projects that have been highlighted today are really at scale and kind of quite radical changes, but there's no lesser value in implementing kind of smaller incremental changes, where finances can allow some of those kind of smaller interventions. Do you find that's the case?
Yeah, definitely. I think it was all about retrofit maybe a couple of years ago, and it still is about that, but I would say on school buildings, council buildings, any commercial buildings, that it's more about extending the life cycle and really just identifying the defects in these buildings to start with. I think that has to be everyone's first port of call when it comes to reducing energy consumption, is just really addressing the heat loss in those buildings. There's a lot of funding out there for social housing, so and loads of data, and we deal with that every day. But when it comes to those commercial buildings, it can be really difficult to even get energy consumption data from a client. So I think there is a challenge there. And even, commercial EPCs, I think, are pretty rocky as well in terms of accuracy. So I think what we find is that a lot of the surveys we are doing just now are very reactive. We've got major issues. We've got damp and mold. We've got water ingress. We don't know where it's coming from. The building's getting worse. And we're going out and we're doing that reactive survey. And I think we need to start implementing a more proactive approach. Now, I know there's an issue there with funding and who pays for it. That's the question that comes back to me all the time. This is good information, but who's going to pay for this? And what's my return on investment of getting you to carry out these surveys? And I think if I was to give anyone advice when it comes to surveys and our thermal surveys, is you can get massive cost savings just by doing 10 surveys instead of one. Sending a surveyor out on site to do one building using the drone and all of the cost to us of carrying out that survey. If you can carry out a project on a full estate, then there's massive cost savings there. And I think everyone's just been so focused on social housing that the rest of the estates are kind of left behind, and it is purely on lack of funding, I think. But we try to just come in as just that initial starting point and really just say, these are your areas, these are your defects, these are your areas of heat loss, and we are identifying a lot of things that they didn't know were there, and that's the beauty of the thermal side, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point there about like the power of the collective, and maybe what's missing within for the private sector and for the kind of commercial building sector is some way or kind of enabling kind of body to do that kind of collection element of saying, we're looking at this thermal survey, you're 2 minutes down the road or you're the adjacent building. How can we maybe work together to create the economies of scale, like you say, of delivering that work and mutually benefiting from delivering that. So that's something really interesting. I think maybe if we'll get any of our Scottish Enterprise colleagues still listening in, that'll be something that I think we could feed back to them. and maybe something that Best could support with facilitating as well. Obviously, we've got a multitude of programmes, Retrofit Scotland being one of them, which has obviously focus on domestic retrofit, but absolutely non-domestic retrofit is a key opportunity within that sector as well. Gavin, just wanted to come to you a little bit on standards. So you mentioned EnerFit standards, so just not wanting to assume that everybody on the audience is familiar with some of those standards. Would you be able to elaborate on what the EnerFit standards is and how maybe that has shaped and just general standards for the sector has kind of shaped the process and the kind of decision making around what's actually being done at SNRC?
Yeah, so sorry for the shorthand. So EnerFit is the passive house equivalent standard for existing buildings, so for retrofit projects. And to get back to first principles, passive house is a word a lot of people will have heard. It's a kind of shorthand for higher performance energy building standards with quite a rigorous process in terms of guaranteeing that you'll avoid the performance gap between modelled energy consumption in a building and delivered energy consumption, as well as setting specific targets about energy consumption by square metre of the building, setting targets for your air tightness and your thermal performance, as well as certifying different products that you're using to say that they will perform as modelled. A part of this I would probably like back to the last question is why is it important in terms of having these standards? We've chosen EnerFit not purely because of the higher target standard overall, but because of that the need for quality control in the building, as well as this idea of knowledge at the start. So what we've done is we've undertaken thermal surveys and we've undertaken air tightness testing of the existing building, and as part of that we've then modelled the building in the passive house planning package PHPP. So that goes beyond doing like a standard non-domestic EPC to model what the existing consumption in the building is, and that's fundamental to understanding where your baseline is to where you want to get to, and then also guaranteeing that what you actually build will deliver that. And the passive house planning package is incredibly accurate if you adhere to the system. In terms of certifying the project under the standard, that gives you a badge that you can put on and say, look, we've actually had it certified that the project does meet with that, but actually the outcomes is what we're talking about. What we wanted to do was follow the principles, and I touched on the phasing nature of our proposal is that we are not achieving EnerFit in this project. We are achieving it over the longer term. The project itself won't meet the lower demand, and it won't meet it may meet the air tightness target because we still set that at 1 actuation at 50 pascals, which is the standard, but we won't get the heat demand per square metre down because we haven't completed the envelope at this point. But the future, the long-term intent is what it allows us to do is while we're building, we're recording everything we're doing. So that's a huge part of it, is that quality control. And we're also modelling all the changes and variations that we're making in the PHPP to keep us on track, to ensure that what we don't want to do is do something now that means later down the line we can't meet our overall intended energy performance target. Yeah, so in terms of the standards as well, also should have mentioned, I did mean to say that the net zero public building standards as well as an aspiration for us on the project as well. So we will follow through that methodology, but also what we get is we know that by aiming for the higher standard of EnerFit in terms of performance consumption during in operation, we know we'll meet the energy targets, but we set our own carbon targets as well. So in terms of embodied carbon, we've modelled everything within it to ensure that we're meeting or exceeding best practice on the project as well, which is something that we're pretty proud of, and that we're quite happy that we're currently on target within our first phase to meet 200 kilograms of CO2 emissions per metre cubed, which is far below A-rated best practice, but we would be aiming to drive that further down in future phases as well.
Fantastic, thank you so much. And in terms of, because a lot of these standards are relatively new, or they're kind of not commonplace, they are more aspirational, how have you found the kind of contractors and the kind of workforce and their ability to, like you say, you're not going for that standard right now, but so there's an extra level of kind of recording and accuracy around you know, how things are deployed and what you do and how you do that. How have you found the contractors on that side?
I mean, it's absolutely been a learning curve for everyone, as it is for anyone whose first project it is. It's not a learning curve for us as a client, and it's not a learning curve for our design team, who are very well versed in this. What we have been able to do is we've been able to bring the contractor along on that journey, and their main contractor, Clark Contracts, have been excellent in terms of really adopting this as an opportunity to springboard them into learning. So they've undertaken training that we deliver at best, which is Passive House in Practice, which again, we're talking about standards, we talk about Passive House Interfit. These are just core principles of higher energy efficiency buildings that has a wider context as well. So understanding the need for insulation continuity, avoiding thermal bridging, what does it mean when we're talking about air tightness testing, and why is that important to us? And also we are learning on as we go. So I touched on the fact that we're using innovative products or approaches, so we also have to allow time within that. So we have learned about the time it takes to cut one material over another, where the best use of a material might be in a particular situation, and that's what we're kind of trying to promote outward. It takes you longer to do the first one than it does to do the second, and I think that that's true of this project, and it's been true as we've gone through iterative processes, even just panel by panel that we've done. So it's been really great to see that, and more projects pushing for higher standards will push more people to upskill, and that we will close that the gap in terms of the supply chain as well.
Fantastic. And obviously the benefit of it being best that is doing that and showcasing that we can hopefully pass on those learnings, so that the first time that someone else does it, they won't make all the same mistakes or those kind of slower processes as our first time, and it'll be like our fifth time of doing something. So
to let everybody off the hook though, Emma, is just they'll all make different mistakes, as we made different mistakes to the ones that we had headed off at the past when we started. So that's the nature of retrofit, unfortunately for everyone. So don't be afraid. The key word with retrofit is compromise. So I think Excellent. That's the best position to take.
I think that's a really great message for today. Catherine, just to pick up on something you said around the kind of procurement side of things in new frameworks. So Gavin touched on that kind of supply chain and that upskilling piece and the kind of commercial opportunity for businesses in Scotland. How would any industry partners on the webinar or engage with HeatSource be able to engage with those frameworks and take advantage of the opportunity of the kind of public sector funding that's coming through?
Yeah, no worries. And also just want to say thank you again for the call out to the Net Zero Public Sector Building Standard. I think that it is a really excellent framework, and I do think that everyone should be looking at it and looking at how they can adopt bits of it, even if they don't think that they're ready to be like adopting it wholesale, particularly the Objective 1 work where you just look at your building in its place, and calling back to what Lisa said there about like who are your neighbours and what are their needs and how is the community interacting with your building. I think that even if you only do Objective 1, then there's a huge amount within that. And yes, encourage people to get in touch with Scottish Futures Trust if they are doing retrofits and want to apply some or all of the standards, because we are really keen as well to be producing some case studies. As you said, Emma and Gavin, it's really easy to picture the how you're going to do it if you can see how someone else has done it. But back to your question about the procurement. So we're hoping to have the project support unit in place by the end of this calendar year. So they will be then supporting us with the getting the contractor framework back up in place. So once we have a PSU contract, one of their roles will be engaging with the sector, like with the private sector in terms of contractors, and then also with the public sector to really make sure people understand how to make the best use of them and their support, and then also how to call off the framework. That will be in place for, I think we are hoping to maximise our procurement timescales in terms of like not having to do this again too soon. So I think that then those frameworks will be in place for about 5 or 6 years, and I hope that as well gives some of that confidence that this is a long-term commitment, this support will be in place, obviously throughout the next Parliament, and it will help us to. Oh, sorry, it's supposed to spell out. And it will help us to think as well about how we deploy funding in the best way possible. In the meantime, welcome to contact the GPZ's email address that I think is in the chat, or Scottish Futures Trust, or I'm sure that Emma, you'll be sharing our personal contact details as well, so I can always direct people. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's us. We've actually come to the end of our time. Thank you once again to our panel, and just to shout out the different newsletters and methods of engaging with HeatSource and also with our speakers there. So if anyone is interested in diving a little bit deeper into any of the projects, case studies or opportunities that have been highlighted today, please do make use of those contact details. Thank you for joining us this morning, and just a final thank you to all of our panel, and we'll see you again hopefully soon at our next HeatSource events. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Emma. Thank